Welcome to the Stress Free Dentist Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Block. As always, I want to inspire, entertain, and educate you on the best tools and technologies out there. My goal is to help make your practice and career more profitable, efficient, and most importantly, more enjoyable. And check out all of my nonfiction and children's books on Amazon, and check out the stressfreedentist.com for any upcoming events. And if you're feeling you're a dental professional that's burnt out, or you just feel stuck or want to get to that next level, visit the International Academy of Dental Life Coaches, or www.iadlc.com, and we'll get you matched up with a life coach that understands dentistry. I also wanted to thank our amazing sponsor, Equa Marketing. They have helped me and my practice over the years to improve with SEO and website performance. And to find out how you can make your practice dominate in your area, go to www.equa.com/MSMSFD to book your complimentary meeting. Again, that's www.ekwa.com/MSMSFD.
All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode. And today I'm joined by Dr. Amanda Wilson. Amanda, thanks so much for joining us.
Aloha.
Aloha. So I take it you're in Hawaii right now?
I am, yeah. Sorry, I can't tell from the background, but
Yeah, I know. We got a view of a wall, like a desk wall back there. Like I bet you've got some amazing views out there.
Yeah, sometimes I do them by the ocean, but it's usually louder. So this is better. You guys got to get all the important information.
Yeah, we could focus on what you're saying and not like what's going on in the background.
Correct.
All right. So tell me I want to get into all about Straightsmile Solutions and how you're helping general dentists and pediatric dentists with ortho. But first, just tell me about your journey into dentistry. How did you decide to become a dentist, and where did you go to dental school?
That's a great question. So I had one of those, parents. I'm sure a lot of us out there had parents who didn't think that we needed ortho. Or maybe I had an uneducated pediatric dentist who kept telling my mom I didn't need ortho, even though I thought I did. So when I was 18, a senior in high school, I started doing my own research, and I really started asserting myself because I realized I had a class 2 Div 2 bite, which I knew wasn't good. I was biting up on the roof of my mouth and causing my front teeth to get loose. So I self-diagnosed myself without Google, just going into the library, learning about these things. And I proposed it to my pediatric dentist, who finally got me to see an orthodontist. And since I was 18 going through ortho in college, it became really interesting to me. And I said, hey, I want to be an orthodontist. And so everyone kind of laughed at me, and they're like, that's really hard. But I said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go to dental school, and the only thing I'm going to do is be an orthodontist. And I did it. Yeah. So I went to UCSF in San Francisco, which is my hometown, and met my husband there, and went to UConn for ortho residency.
And now, did you end up practicing right away? Did you associate? Did you buy a practice? What happened there?
All of the above. Well, I got married to my husband, who was from Hawaii, and Hawaii has some pretty funky licensure rules unless you graduated past 2004 and unless you've taken the 8X exam. And I really wasn't interested in going back to take another exam, given that I'm an orthodontist. I actually think it's below standard of care to have an orthodontist go and do perio and endo and all this other stuff. So I worked for about 10 years in San Francisco, associating, and also I had my own startup practice. And then my husband convinced me to move back to Hawaii because people in Hawaii like to take care of their elderly parents. And it's actually a great place to raise kids. It's like a small town, really safe, good manners, really friendly. So we went back here about 10 years ago so that we could raise our kids a little differently than we were in California. And I knew I needed to do something else besides clinical, because I couldn't, and I didn't really want to commute back and forth. So I started a consulting company. I had recognized, since my husband's a GP and his friends, that all of them were getting into the ortho space and they had no idea what was going on. And they kept asking me for help with their Clinchecks, of course, to start, and their ClearCorrect setups. And from there, I said, hey, why don't I just develop a consulting or educational program that isn't biased by a certain, was out there at the time. All the education was biased. It was either front teeth only, like 6 months type of programs, or fast kind of programs. I'm not mentioning their names. Or it was these type of engines that don't move all the teeth and really fix bites properly. So I said, I'm going to teach them how to do it properly. And I'm not going to be affiliated with any particular aligner company. You can take these concepts anywhere. I don't get any kickbacks from any companies, braces, phase one, airway. any type of aligner, etc.
And the company is called Straightsmile Solution.
Correct. Plural solutions, because it's more than one solution.
Smile Solutions.
Yeah.
And it's very clear on your, I looked at your link tree. It says, we help general and pediatric dentists launch and scale ortho. I mean, it's very clear and concise on what you do. Tell me exactly what the process is. If I'm a dentist that's either looking to start doing ortho or I've already started, how does it work? Do you have a bunch of videos? Do I get to talk to you? How does it work?
Yeah. So first of all, I also want to let you know that we do help orthodontists as well. I've actually had some clients who are orthodontists, especially the new grads, or even the older ones who aren't familiar with aligners, maybe just do braces. So we don't only help general and pediatric dentists, but basically to get started, I basically decided that if I'm going to do this, I'm going to use the power of the internet to educate everybody globally about really good orthodontics. Because what I found out was that there's so many dentists all over the world in countries maybe that don't have the educational resources we have. And they kept asking me, hey, can you teach me how to do this? Can you teach me how to do this? So I just threw all my educational platforms up on YouTube. So if you want to get started for free, just go to YouTube, basically, or you can contact me and maybe you can link in your show notes, the link tree, so they can get access to those videos. I have over 2,300 videos to date on all kinds of ortho, and it's organized by playlists. So there's one for braces, there's one for Invisalign, there's one for phase 1 interceptive airway, et cetera, one for ClearCorrect. So you can just go to what you're interested in and just watch those videos.
Now, what would you say are the top mistakes that general dentists are making with ortho regarding case selection?
Yeah, I mean, top mistakes, first of all, they may not understand what records they need and what standard of care. Just because a certain class told you didn't need this or didn't need a CEF or didn't need something doesn't mean it's not true. So each state has its own dental licensure act. Each state has its own standard of care. So you want to make sure that you're familiar with what the laws are in your state. I can kind of teach you to a high level standard of care, which I call the orthodontist standard of care, and that will keep you really safe, and which cases to avoid, and which cases to get additional records on. So that would be the first thing I would say. Beyond that, once you get that, just making sure that you're taking appropriate cases, that you're aware of maybe growth in a teenager or a kid that could happen, teaching you how to look out for that and how to adjust for that. I don't want people to not take kids and teens. People think it's scary. It's not. It's actually so much easier. The ortho is way easier to do just because you don't have all those perio issues or those restorative issues. And usually the younger the kids are, the more compliant they are. I know that seems kind of backwards, but I've never had any compliance issues in anyone under 10. And doing ortho on them is just so fun. Like they actually want to be there. They love wearing the stuff. They do what they're told. They don't talk back, no lip, So yeah, I mean, those are the main things I'd say. Besides that, on adults, I'd say there's two big tips that I can give you. Number one, make sure when you're taking your photos, don't just use the screen grabs from your 3Shape or your iTero. Make sure you actually take proper clinical photos. And when you take the photos, use articulating paper before you take the photos. So that's real easy, right? It takes 2 seconds. Tap, tap, grind, see where it's marking. Then when your Clincheck or your Clear Pilot check comes back, look and see how they set up the articulation. Make sure the articulation matches, because I would say on a good 30% on an initial on pretty much any aligner system, it's not articulated right, even if you use the scan, which makes your whole Clincheck wacky. It's just not you're gonna have so many more refinements if you just miss that small step. And my personal opinion is that the number is higher than 50% for a refinement, sometimes 60, 70%. Again, this is not a research-based study. This is just my personal experience. If you control for that, you will reduce your refinement significantly. The other thing that's a quick trick or tip that you can really control things and reduce your revisions and refinements and get better outcomes is to slow down your plan. Now, remember, these are public companies for the most part that obviously they have to put their shareholders and their profits first. That's fine. They're companies. I get that. So they're going to try to reduce their overhead. How does an aligner company reduce their overhead? By dispensing less product, right? And getting the most ROI out of that. Fine, they're a business, but you are the dentist. You're allowed to have control. Just because they said this plan should be 15 aligners doesn't mean it has to be. Now, Invisalign uses about an average of 0.25 millimeters movement per aligner. That is their default. ClearCorrect uses closer to 0.30. That's the last stats I read. I may be wrong. So if someone from one of these companies says I'm wrong, feel free to let me know. But what I like as an orthodontist, and we believe in keeping our forces slow and low, we would prefer to dial that down. If we can keep the forces slow and low and perhaps change the trays a little bit more frequently, it's way more comfortable. The trays don't get gross. And assuming that you're paying for comprehensive or an unlimited product, it doesn't cost you anymore. So it's a win-win-win-win, and you'll have a lot fewer refinements. Just make sure that your patient stays on track if you're doing these 7-day changes with a slowed down plan. When they put the aligner in for the next tray change, have them look in the mirror with a flashlight and make sure it's 100% tracking. Remember, the 7 days doesn't start until it 100% seats like a second skin. There should never, ever be any micro gaps between the aligner and the tooth. If there is, use Chewies to seat it, then start your 7 days. That's a lot, I know, but that's it. That's all you need to know, really.
Those are great, absolutely great tips. I mean, really, the only thing that I learned in dental school about orthodontics was how to refer to an orthodontist. So this is great. This is great stuff. What's the easiest service regarding ortho for a practice to add to make some revenue? With not a lot of overhead and a lot of doctor chair time.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends on your team and what type of practice you are. I think you want to find out what your patient base is interested in. Obviously, if you have an older patient base, it's probably going to be aligners of some sort. If you already have an iTero, then I think Invisalign's a no-brainer. If you don't have an iTero, you have a Medit or a 3Shape, then I would probably do either ClearCorrect. They've gotten a lot better over the years. Or if you're just doing minor stuff, there's an option called white label that's out there. So what white label is, I kind of made that name, but that just means you don't have to have a 3D printer or anything like that. All you have to do is have a scanner. You export that scan to a company that does a setup. There's a bunch of companies in the US that do it. I can refer you to some I know. The one that we use is $80 to do the setup. Yes, ClearCorrect and Invisalign don't charge you for the setup because they're big companies, right? That charge a lot more. The white label companies are small companies and they charge a lot less. So you pay like a la carte, right? So you pay for the setup. It's not as fancy as a Clincheck, but it works. It's just as accurate. And then once you approve, for a small plan, let's say it's 10 aligners, 10 uppers, 10 lowers, right? So that's 10 plus 10 is 20. It's $20 per aligner. So 20 times 20, right? 400 plus 80 for the setup. So now your lab fee is only $480 for that plan. And you only have to pay as you go. So let's say you only want them to produce 5 aligners at a time, 5 upper and lower is 10. So that means your initial lab fee, if you only want them to produce the first batch of 5 upper, 5 lower, would be $280. So it's a great way to keep cash flow while you do these small and easy cases. So if everybody's interested, I'm glad to introduce you. It's a very easy workflow. It just doesn't come in fancy packages or anything like that. So you're not paying for any of the branding or the marketing or anything like that. But it's a great way to get started and to keep your overhead low. That would be for an older adult practice. For a practice with kids, I mean, no brainer doing phase 1. There's so much cool phase 1 out there. I mean, with Invisalign, within their label, you've got Invisalign First, you've got Invisalign with MA, you've got IPE, Invisalign Palatal Expander, but you can also do regular expanders, which are just as easy and really cheap. And pretty much for the aligners and removables, in most states, your staff can do all the work. The only thing you have to do is sometimes you have to supervise the attachments, sometimes you don't. Check your Dental Practice Act. For bonding, usually you have to supervise it. You obviously have to take off the attachments or anything that's glued. That takes 2 seconds to drill off. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, just supervise, and you can even put them on the virtual check-in programs, which is free with Invisalign. And you can do all the visits at home for the most part, just off a cell phone app, and just so little chair time, so easy. So I would definitely recommend that.
And what's an easy way for someone to learn about this without paying a lot of money?
You just go into my playlist on YouTube. It's free. There's a phase 1 playlist or an Invisalign playlist. You can learn everything you need. And then if you want to start a case, I always say best way to learn, honestly, is not to take these giant classes sponsored by the aligner companies, which obviously are swaying you to doing more profit. And which, I mean, we're still going to do a lot of cases, but our goal is to have you really understand it. So the best way to learn is to work with an orthodontist. If you don't like me, that's fine. There's a lot of orthodontists that do consulting. I can send you to so many. Some are regional. So you might even have one in your state. who some of them won't even charge. If you're willing to refer them some cases, the harder cases, a lot of them will help you with your Clin Checks, for free. So just ask around, but if you can't find it, someone, there's a lot of us who do it nationally as well.
And what are your thoughts about bringing an in-house orthodontist into the office? What are some risks there?
Lots of risks. So I actually have some content made on that as well. I've done that enough times. I've been the in-house orthodontist, which was great for me. Don't get it wrong. But first of all, they're usually going to require a massive per diem. Nobody's going to go in off percentages anymore, just because they're not sure how many you're going to refer and everything. Obviously, it depends on how you're going to pay them as 1099 or W-2, but for the most part, it's rare that they're going to finish their cases. So there's a huge chance they're going to leave and you're going to be stuck finishing these cases. And if they do mechanics that you don't understand, you're in a world of hurt trying to hire a new orthodontist, and orthodontists are all trained differently. So it's really hard for me to go in and follow another orthodontist unless we were trained similarly and we have similar values. I've done that before, but I've also gone into offices and I'm like, what the heck is going on? I don't know. And it can cause major upheaval for the patients and the office. So to me, I think it's better you just refer your cases out, keep it clean, so that you're not responsible for those if they're hard cases. And the easy ones, keep in-house the patients you like, and just learn to do it yourself and train up all your dentists in your office and your staff how to do it.
And what are you seeing out there that the biggest mistakes that dentists are making regarding treatment planning?
I think I mentioned before, this obviously the articulation is the biggest mistake, or doing it too fast, or not getting the proper records. So let's say, for example, we have just kind of an average 50-year-old female adult, might have a tiny bit of not active perio, but maybe a little bit of bone loss, with some mild to moderate crowding, right? So we'll say moderate crowding. So moderate crowding is 4 to 6 millimeters. So someone like me, but who has crowded teeth. I don't have crowded teeth, right? So how do we move the teeth, right? We've got crowding. Well, if you don't have the right records, be it a CBCT or a CEF or both, you don't know how you're going to move the teeth. Are you going to move them forward? Are you going to move them out to get space? How are we going to get space? Because sometimes the bone doesn't allow it. And without those records, we don't know. So are we going to do IPR? Are we going to take out a lower incisor? There's lots of different ways. Are we going to do sequential distalization? So without all that information, we don't know what direction to have the teeth. And the default treatment plans on almost every aligner company is moving things out and forward. And that's nice if you can do it. But if it doesn't work out, you're going to end up with perio damage, possible fenestrations, possible mobility, possible loss of teeth, possible endo issues, and it can be a big mess. And the aligner companies do not know how to do this. You have to know how to do this. So you got to know how to drive the boat. So every aligner company can give you great outcomes, but if you don't steer the ship properly and know how to do it, then you could potentially have a big mess.
And what about finishing cases? What are you seeing dentists are making as far as mistakes regarding finishing cases?
Finishing cases actually should not be an issue as long as you slowed down the plan and gotten your articulation properly and kept your patient on track. So all those tips I gave you before, you really shouldn't have. Refinement should be a one-off if you do those 3 things. It should just be very easy to repair if they get off track, and they shouldn't get off track if they're following those instructions and you slow down the plan. But if they get off track, you just pair it with the old setup. It's just really easy. But tap, grind, just make sure you don't have heavy anterior contacts. If you do, you might have to add some lower IPR. I would say the most common issue in finishing cases is a posterior open bite. Sometimes that's just unfortunate. That's just something that we don't see in braces, that we do see in clear aligners if they're a heavy bruxer or clencher. All those forces on the back teeth on the plastic can cause some unfortunate intrusion. So of the molars, so we can combat that by adding additional attachments or anterior bite turbos. You shouldn't have to resort to throwing elastics on the back teeth. You guys are just jumping way ahead. It's really not that hard to fix. But definitely just keep your eye on that, and sometimes you have to use masseter Botox to finish a case just to take the pressure off the back.
And what about regarding retention? Do you recommend, I guess every case is different, but do you recommend clear aligner retainers, or do you use a lot of lower lingual anterior splints?
Totally depends on the case. And I like to have that aftercare discussion, not only at the beginning of treatment to see what their objectives are. They may have some predefined thoughts, especially if this is a retreatment case. Or even parents might have some predefined thoughts. I mean, nothing wrong with bonded retainers, but putting on a bonded retainer is a lifelong commitment that's going to require lifelong maintenance. And you need to have clearly defined warranties and what happens if it breaks. I mean, when it breaks, it can be a real emergency. And if they're on vacation or they're out of town or they went away to college, you better have a plan for that because they probably will break, whether they bite into something. And as soon as those suckers break, teeth start moving immediately. So it's always risky. I don't mind them for a short time. And most hygienists hate them. So it isn't my preference. There's a few times when you really, really need one. And some of those would be, for example, let's say they had a frenectomy, a high frenum. We did the frenectomy, probably a good idea to do a bonded retainer. Maybe it's like a perio split and we need one, I get that. Okay, then we need one. So in our offices, we've always had in the retainer or aftercare agreement, we say we will give you one set of retainers, whatever is recommended by the doctor. So it might be a bonded retainer with an Essex over. It might be a Vivera, or an Essex upper and lower, but you need to have a plan for a long-term retention solution and aftercare. And one of the mistakes a lot of doctors make is they think, hey, I'm done. Ortho's done. One set of retainers, bye-bye. No. It's aftercare for life. Now, do you have to provide that service for free for life? No, not at all. Most orthodontists provide it for 1 year. Obviously, if something shifts in the first few weeks, usually it's treated at no cost, but you really want to have that built into your aftercare agreement, aftercare warranty, and you want the parents or the patient to sign that before you take it off. So that's something we can definitely work with you at Straightsmile Solutions to help you develop that. A lot of companies now are getting into the whole aftercare monetization. So there's a lot of branded companies out there, Retainers for Life, Forever Aligned Club, I'm just Retainer Direct, Doctor Direct Retention. You can look up some of these companies and see what they're doing. These are for-profit companies with equity investment partners that are going direct to consumer or direct to doctor to help to monetize the aftercare plan so that your patient has an aftercare plan for life. The dentists sometimes get a cut of it, sometimes they don't. But you can do this yourself within your own office with even your non-ortho patients, just any hygiene patient that maybe has had retainers. Hey, do you have retainers? Hey, do you want to switch them out on a regular basis? I mean, it's a great idea to have more than one retainer, especially if you're having Essex or Viveras. Viveras always come in a set of 4, which there's a reason for that. You should have way more than one retainer, but you don't have to have the doctor pay for it. It doesn't necessarily have to be part of the ortho plan. You just want to have a plan for them to get more over time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and have that all up in writing and that conversation up front. That's great advice. Yeah,
and the biggest complaint that a lot of orthodontists get, or especially general dentists who do ortho, is the whole just kind of mess that happens in the aftercare because it's so easy for a relapse to happen if they don't have a plan, And then it's like he said, she said, well, no, he didn't tell me this, or he didn't tell me I needed more than one. Another great tip is when you debond, of course, you want to take final records, a full set of final records, final panel. Also take a photo upper and lower with the retainers in, showing that they fit, that they track, because that is the number one. Well, they never fit. Well, if you don't have proof that they fit, patient's right. Patient's always right? Now you're retreating for free and you're doing new retainers for free. So, consider that. Always just taking that photo can save your booty, really easily.
Great advice. All right, 2 final questions. What advice would you give to the young dentists out there? And how do we find out more about what you're up to?
Sure. Young dentists. Well, I'm assuming we're talking about general dentists or primary care dentists, but young dentists, I mean, don't be afraid to try specialty work. Just make sure you find a mentor, so you can ask your questions off that mentor, or a mentor could be a local, specialist near you. So, specialty work is great, especially ortho. It's very freeing. It's something that you can do. It's very cerebral and you don't have to do that much hands-on. So, especially as you age as a dentist, you have to have a plan for your neck, for your back, for your arms, for your wrists. Things might go down, right? And we want you to have a long career. So the best part about being proficient at ortho, especially removable ortho, is that you can still have a long career that brings in good production without having to really use your hands that much. So that would be my tip. And what was your other question?
How do we find out more about what you're up to?
Oh, easy. Pretty easy. You can just Google Straightsmile Solutions, or maybe you can link the Linktree link in your notes. I'm happy to talk to every single listener of the Stress-Free Dentist podcast by Eric Block. So if you reach out to me and say you listen to the podcast, I will do a free phone call with you. There is a link on my website, or just email me and mention this podcast, and we'll have a convo. We won't be going over a case, but we can just answer any questions that you might have about ortho.
That's great. Is the email info@straightsmilesolutions.com?
You got it. Yeah. Or find Straightsmile Solutions on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and reach out to me there.
That's great. Dr. Amanda Wilson, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks again for listening to the Stress Free Dentist podcast. And don't hesitate to get in touch with me at info@thestressfreedentist.com. And if you haven't already, please subscribe on your favorite platform and leave us a review. Until the next episode, I'm Dr. Eric Block, the Stress Free Dentist.